What's up everybody, it's Snitch here, bringing another patch review, helping you understand the changes and how they will affect the metagame. 0.6.0 has finally arrived. Been a little while since the last patch. This one brings some new quality of life stuff, including item art, as well as some much needed bug fixes and changes to favorite bear in the jungle. Let's just get into it and take a look. So, we've got content first of all. In-game shop, art, item art is finally here. This is pretty cool. Let people glance at the scoreboard, make decisions faster once they get used to it. Lots of name changes here. I don't really know why. I guess it's because he did different art maybe, and they felt like they had to change the name to match it. I don't know. This will probably take a little bit longer to get used to, changing all the names of everything, but you know. I guess it's not that big a deal. I'm gonna miss K-Castle, dude. Now everyone's gonna be bloodlust sabering away from me, and it's just not gonna feel the same. I think this is fine. It's just it takes some getting used to. So apparently in general, gameplay, Prime buff. Prime buff now grants allied minions within 2,000 units 200 energy and physical armor, 150 movement speed, and 20% extra damage. A VFX now occurs when minions have this buff. So I don't actually know how this is different compared to what Prime did before, because I don't know what Prime did before necessarily, because it was a little bit vague. I guess seeing the flat numbers makes it look very strong, but I don't know how drastically different this is compared to what it was before, is all I'm going to say about it. Maybe I can find that out for you guys and do some sort of addendum in the description or something if I know. Currently, I don't know what this is like compared to the current state of the game, because it already gives them a lot of energy and physical armor for sure. I think the movement speed and the damage might be new. I mean, the VFX is a really good change. You kind of just had to know that Prime buff gave minions more defensive stats. It definitely gave the defensive stats before, that's for sure. I'm just not sure about the additional damage and movement speed. So this change is mainly aimed at closing out games a little bit faster. I think the average game speed has actually felt pretty fine this patch, but I guess it's just giving people more ways to push their advantages. Maybe they feel like it's still a little bit too high. I don't think this will be a drastic change, but it will be noticeable, especially these two changes. But they were already getting high defensive stats, preventing them from being wave cleared anyway. So I guess it's mainly on the movement speed and the extra damage, so you can push waves up to inhibs faster. You'll probably have someone walk with the wave, so it walks faster a little bit, gets to the push a little bit faster. Could make stacking waves a little bit easier if you have one person clearing a wave and then one person walking with the wave behind, or maybe even like you would not clear the wave, you just walk with the previous wave, so you could try and stack two together, because that's much stronger, especially if they all have this prime buff. Overall, I think it's just a kind of small change to try and push games to end a little bit quicker. I think the extra damage will probably be quite noticeable, but overall, Prime was already very good at ending games, so I don't know if it will make a drastic change, you know, in the long run. These two would definitely be noticeable, and maybe an early Prime will be a lot more impactful and will actually like cause inhibs to be taken, because I guess inhibitors are very, very strong right now, partially due to the nature that there's no crystal, there's just the tower. So the tower is much tankier, I believe, so it can make up for being both the crystal and itself. So it's quite hard to take them down, so maybe this would just make it so an early Prime is a lot more effective at getting you an inhibitor, if you're able to collect waves properly and stuff like this. So mainly just rewarding teams who take Prime early and get value out of it, I think. Lane minions. New pushing mechanics added to lane minions. Lane minions gain increased damage and damage reduction for teams that have a higher average hero level than the other team and for having more towers destroyed in the lane. This effect compounds together to have an increasing effect the more advantage the team has. This serves two purposes. When teams have an advantage in lane and experience, lanes will more easily push into enemy territory and helping quickening any hard pushes and tower sieges, meaning smart strategic team choices are more easily rewarded. Conversely, this also allows teams who are at a disadvantage in lane and inexperienced farm in lane more safely, given the lanes are more easy to push against, requiring less advantage lanes to position more safely with farming catching up. Yeah, I think I read this more as the second than the initial part. I think this actually, I don't know, it's hard to tell without any flat, like, actual numbers. It's a very vague change because it's all words, right? But I think this reads more to me as it makes it harder to win the game in some ways, because it's much harder to farm if your lane's always pushing. I think players have to be a lot more active on noticing when waves are about to clash, because I think if you're just not there, you're just going to miss a bunch of creeps. It's going to feel really bad to be winning and just missing CS because your lanes are pushing. And sometimes it might not matter, I guess, because the pressure is more valuable, especially in lanes where you can't farm. That's where you'll feel the advantage, I guess. If you can't go there anyway, you know, let's say you've taken right tower in the early game, so you're grouping mid as 4. Let's say if the duo lane took their right tower, so they go mid to group, and then they couldn't farm there anyway. I guess it will feel better then because they'll have slightly more pressure than they would otherwise. But overall, I think this change feels not really net gain for anybody, and it might just be better for the losing team and just let them freeze really easily, which could be really hard to break if it's deep and you just have like a tower advantage and maybe like a 1 level up, so you're not really that much farther ahead, but they could just be like freezing on you and you just end up missing more and more waves. I did set out players of what the actual numbers are, but initially I don't know if I really like how this change works. I get what they're trying to do, but depending on the numbers, I feel like it'll either feel pretty whatever and no one will really notice it most of the time unless you're really far ahead, or it's going to be really probably quite annoying, honestly. Just to be like missing waves in mid especially. I think it's very hard to farm already if you've taken the tower. So now if your lanes are constantly pushing and they just freeze on you, you have to just like run at side lanes and like not really be able to do anything, I guess. if the enemy team's playing well. So I just feel like you're just burning waves for no reason. But this change is a little bit concerning for me, and I guess we'll just I just have to work out what the actual numbers are to see how much of it affects the game. Attack speed scaling. All heroes have attack speed scaling, meaning there's a direct way to balance how different heroes interact with attack speed. It's an invaluable tool to balance how heroes interact with attack speed, especially those that are not meant to scale with attack speed, i.e. carries versus support. So this is basically nerfing 80 carry Deca and 80 carry Mural, I think is the main change. I don't really think it needed to happen personally, but I know some people are upset about it. The other change that could be here is this could give more variance between different AD carries and how they build. They haven't listed all the changes, you know, so we don't know if, like, I would assume, you know, TB, Murdoch, Sparrow, they're all the same, right? That's what they were before. But there's a chance that maybe one of them got buffed, or maybe they are different. I don't know. Again, just like no numbers here makes me not sure how big this change affects the game. I would assume it's mainly just hitting the support carries and just like, you know, weird characters building red. They didn't like it because it made the game a bit confusing maybe for new players to see like a Muriel AD carry or a Deca AD carry. Like, it was just weird, and they didn't want it to function, so they're just changing how attack speed scaling works. So those characters can't build attack speed and be as effective. Just another, I mean, already they had like things like not like steroids and things like this, but it's just like a way that it limits that choice for them. It's like a hard cap on them building red items basically. So it's just gotta force it out of the game. Hero growth stats. Heroes now gain growth stats slower in the early game and faster in the late game. Heroes begin and end with the same amount of stats, but the journey from start to finish is different. Heroes gain a flat amount of stats for each level. This flat effect has a different relative effect in the early game to the late game. If a hero gets 80 health, level 2 has a base of 550, then they gain a 14.5% boost to their health, whereas if they're going to level 16 to level 17, they get a 4.6% effect. While this relative effect is supposed to decrease as the game progresses, reducing this discrepancy will help each level up feel more equal in their relative impact and keep level discrepancies with players more competitively healthy. I think this is mainly looking at like 1 through 10. I think they just felt like mainly melee heroes just getting too many base stats. You know, Boris, Sevarog, all these characters just come online base stat wise really, really fast, and I think it feels particularly bad for AD carry because they're kind of like hard stuck with their support, so they're splitting XP, so they're always quite underleveled in comparison to these tanks, and it made a big portion of the game where I think the level gap was really pushing AD carry down and making them feel like they didn't do any damage. I think the base stat growth was very high, and it was giving a lot of rewards on top of things like Bale Armor and, you know, these other kind of cheap green items that tanks could pick up. They had a very, very, very powerful mid game, which I think was particularly frustrating for AD carry. So I think it's trying to like smooth up the curve a bit, make it so yes, tanks will be strong, they will have more levels, but it won't feel like completely ridiculous again. So again, can't be sure without the numbers for each hero. Probably need to check each hero individually, but that's kind of what I assume this change is aiming at. Just kind of giving ADC a bit more space in like the early mid fights, where it will be a struggle for them to compete with these kind of like tank bruisers that have a level lead. Red jungle, the rearmost jungle camp and the red jungle zone route. Okay, I see what they're trying to do. Red jungle is highly prioritized over blue jungle. Everybody starts there, everybody farms there. There's 3 camps. I feel like they kind of disregard the fact that it's not mainly because there's 3 camps. I feel like it's because it's red buff and blue buff is particularly useless for pretty much everybody. I think the only character that actually makes valuable use of blue in the early game with the jungles is probably Countess. Like, no one else really cares, maybe Quang. No one else really cares about the mana, honestly, and it's not like it provides CDR or anything, so it doesn't really help you clear at all. Whereas red buff, if you have red buff and you're hitting the jungle minions, you're doing the burn on the minions, so your jungle clear gets faster, your ganks are better. It says here they're trying to push vertical jungling and this kind of thing, but I just think this is a really wrong way to go about it, and this is just a huge nerf to characters that can actually clear the jungle actively, like Countess and Boris, who could actually take all of these camps. Like, some jungles looks like Kai, they're a single target, right? So it's a lot harder for them to clear all 5 camps all the time, but Countess and Boris function off being able to farm the jungle really fast. So it's pretty lame, I think, honestly, that they just took out a camp and they just didn't give anything. Like, there's just no value, no. I mean, I think jungle was pretty meh already right now, and then now they just removed a camp and there's no compensation at all. I think this is pretty lame, actually. It also kind of sucks for any junglers that if they have laners that just take their camps because they have time without really like considering the jungler and their position. Now they only have 4 camps to do, you know, like they're just losing potential golden experience. If their laners are just taking their camps as well, it's gonna feel even worse. That's more of like I guess a player issue than anything else, but it's definitely more punishing for junglers if laners are just taking all their camps now. It's enough to like Beast Hunter as well. And I mean, once people get Bale Armor, they pretty much all can clear all 5 camps camps to kind of like farm the jungle for a bit. Like, it doesn't really feel particularly thought out. There's just no compensation at all for this kind of like actual big nerf, especially to things like I said, like Countess and Boris, who could actually clear the jungle quite actively. Suddenly they just lost a camp of golden experience for just no gain at all. They say they're trying to push vertical jungling as a strategy, but vertical jungling already existed, and the idea of a strong side, if anything, was enabling vertical jungling more than this change will. Like, the fact that everybody went red and then went up to blue because it was easier, that was already vertical jungling. I don't know what you're trying to do here by removing this camp that actually is enabling vertical jungling anymore. If anything, there's no point starting blue and going red anymore because there's just not as much value. Like, if anything, I think most people will be forced to play safer because they just won't have as much golden experience. And it's more risky to just like forgive what you already have. And if they are going to vertical jungle, they're already doing it anyway. I think this change wasn't super well thought out, to be honest. And I think it's just kind of a big nerf to jungle that was already not in a great spot anyway, and just not really giving them any compensation for it. And it just seems a bit lame to me. We'll see how it plays out, but I just feel like it's not going to push the game in any direction that it feels like they're describing here. I think it's just going to make jungle worse, so that's it. Bug fixes. Fix issue with game clock being off time reconnecting. Blue buff and siege minions should have the proper amount of edgy armor. Steel shield charge, no, not my enemies. War Gauge is active. Properly adds the correct health and power when gaining beast hunter stacks. Still no fix to red buff. I think it's pretty lame as well. I think the red buff leash strategy should be fixed. I think it's just really unhealthy and it makes junglers a lot more healthy. They make this change, right? Because they're like, oh, jungle's looking pretty good. But part of that is because they're doing red buff and taking no damage. Like, I think that's another reason why red side is stronger. Because, like, you take no damage during red buff, and you take a bunch of damage during blue buff. So, I just feel like it's just like they only considered this one thing. They were like, oh, red has 3 camps, and that's why it's strong. But there's so many other factors that I feel like they just kind of ignored. And I don't think this will change anything to do with how jungle starts or paths. Especially with the red buff change not seeming to get fixed. I assume it's a bug because they fixed the blue buff one. Maybe they like it, I'm not sure. But especially with this not getting fixed still, I just don't see why anybody wants to just still start red set. Boris, bare necessities, unstoppable now, so the correct time, so the full duration. I've seen the number 10 seconds quoted. I don't know if it's actually that long, but he's definitely unstoppable for way too long. It's part of what's made him feel so oppressive, but now they've nerfed it, so it should be the correct duration. This will probably push Boris into maybe maxing E even? I don't know. His E is a lot more usable now because it's 80 stacks instead of 100, so maybe they'll look at maxing E of a Q, but Q is still very strong, so it's tough to say. Blood tracker, fix an issue of blood tracker giving movement speed after killing the marked enemy hero. Actually quite a big nerf. I didn't even know this was a bug. I guess I haven't seen it happen too often, but I mean it's a good change, I suppose. It's not meant to work that way. Deca, Ion Bot E should now properly show the VFX during the first use of the match. No cage fix, which has the same bug, but at least they got the E. Pretty annoying in mid when you just throw your E down. You have to like guess where they are in it. On the first one anyway. I don't know, it's such a strange bug that's only on the first one, but you know, it happens I guess. Inner fire, fix an issue not allowing Sparrow to properly stack Relentless passive. So it turns out Sparrow is actually bugged and not doing as much damage as she should. So you guys can enjoy that. I've seen a few people complaining about Sparrow when she shotguns you. But I think it is quite situational that she gets that shotgun playoff. Obviously, they still want to fix it, but she might be doing a bit more damage than she already was, which was already quite a lot. Shield charge Q, fix an issue like stuns to work while unstoppable. So I think this is like you could steal Q people sometimes when they were in New Mantle and stuff. It was pretty weird. I think Steel Q just feels a bit weird sometimes, so I guess they're just fixing it so it shouldn't... Would they fix the Warrior just bug as well here? I think they're just making his Q more fluid again. Hopefully they haven't broken it some other way, because I think Steel Q's had some issues in the past, and they tried to fix these things, but hopefully it just, yeah, it works a bit more consistently now against people with Aegis and people who have Unstoppable and this kind of thing. Because yeah, it definitely has some weird moments, and I've definitely been pushed by Steel Q while in New Mantle or, you know, Boris E or something. There's just some weird stuff that goes on, so good to see they fixed it. Balance, Goblin Glue, changed item tree to build out of health to the attack tree, faction color change from purple to green. Pretty good change. I don't know what the scaling is on Goblin Glue anymore, I don't remember, but yeah, the build path was obviously scuffed, so glad to see they fixed it already. Making it green, I think, is pretty good for bruises. Kind of sad for 80 carries. I think this item is actually kind of cool on 80 carries, but now if it's green, I mean, I guess you were building it anyway if it's purple, and now it's green, so it doesn't really matter. It's probably still fine. It's just, I guess purple feels more aggressive, you know, to me. So I liked it when it was purple. No, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I think it's fine for any carries and stuff if it's green. Better for, you know, bruisers. I think Greystone will like this item more now. Maybe even Severog, maybe Boris. Like, the fact that it's green means it scales a lot better for them with favor, so that's pretty cool. Buff the Titan's Maul. Gold cost change from 750 to 2000. Physical power increase from 25 to 30. You know, I said buff, and then I actually read it, and I don't really think it feels like a buff. I'm not really sure why Titan's Maul got nerfed. I think T-Fist is pretty bad. So, kind of weird to see this item get nerfed in the way that it has. Maybe it's overperforming in statistics. I don't know. I feel like T-Fist is pretty much just a weak choice most of the time. The only example of recent usage I can think of is Cranky building it on Boris, but I don't think
I don't think it looked any better than other items on Boris or looked particularly broken. So maybe I'm just misunderstanding the sleeper power of this item, but I haven't seen people building this and I haven't seen it look super effective when it is built, so I'm not really sure why they're crippling the build path that much. Maybe this one piece felt too powerful. I don't know, it seems like a weird change to me, but it's missing context, so I can't be sure why it's happening. Hero nerfs and changes. Boris, more basic attack damage from 90 to 150 to 70 to 110. This is pretty decent enough for his R&B, but just lowering his burst damage, I guess, at the end of his combo. I mean, realistically, most people already are using R&B for damage. They're mainly using it for repositioning and burst at the end of his attacks. So it won't feel like too much of a nerf, I guess, in that regard. It would just chip away at his burst a little bit at the end, and it also slow his jungle clear. That is one thing it would do. The early 20% will slow his jungle clear by a little bit. But he's already lost a camp anyway, so it's not like clearing any slow matters. He's basically coming out ahead in clear time because he doesn't have to do a camp anymore. Bloodlust passive, basic bonus attack damage for missing HP from 0.1 to 0.5 to 0.1 to 0.3. I think it's actually quite a good nerf to him, to be honest, because it doesn't affect any of his core abilities, which I think is kind of what makes him function. I think most people would say things like, oh, nerf his Q, oh, these kind of things, right? But they've already done that. I think his Q's in a pretty good spot now, to be honest, and it kind of limits him as a hero to its like uptime. I think hitting things like these two things is actually a better change. It'll probably make the character feel a bit more fair, especially with the nerf to the unstoppable. I think honestly this should reel him in quite a bit and probably bring him in line, actually, like they say. I don't think he'll be too strong with these changes, to be honest. I think it would just lower a bit of his DPS and his damage, make him reliant on Q, make him reliant on E stacks, and he should play a little bit more how he's meant to. He'll still shove some games, he'll still feed some games, you know? But I think this will just lower the variance curve a bit between those really giga stomps and those really giga feeds, and hopefully bring him into like a little bit of a middle ground. I think he might feel pretty fine now without feeling too overwhelming, especially because he lost a camp. Deca, mana cost reduced across the board. I don't think it needs to happen, but I'll take it. It's really good for mid Deca, it's really good for support Deca. So it actually makes mid Deca way more playable. Currently it feels really bad to be missing spells because you just lose all the mana because her mana costs are so high, you know, and balanced around her passive, you were just losing so much mana from doing them. But now, if you throw 10 ion bombs, you saved 150 mana. Like, that's pretty cool, dude. You literally get an additional free ion bomb, right, per back. So that's pretty cool. And I mean, on the top of the fact there's her E and her R&B as well, it seems really good for Deca in general. I don't know if she needed buffs, but maybe they still consider her underperforming. And you know what? I'll take them. I'm not gonna complain. But either way, that was full patch 0.6.0. You know, a few worrying things to this patch, honestly, for me that I'm not sure if I like. I guess we'll just have to see how they play out, but not too sure about the minion changes, not too sure about the camp change. But overall, item art, that's cool. New names, I'll get used to them. Boris nerfs, that's cool. Deca buffs, you know, appreciated. But yeah, that was my full patch review of 0.0.6.0. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Have fun playing full on this patch, and I will see you guys all again for the next one. Have a great day, and I will catch you later. Bye.